Back day two of the fast. I feel pretty good for the most part. It's my first time fasting, so it's feels kind of weird. Of course, I'm always hungry. I want to eat something, but it's giving me this like weird restless energy. So it's like it's a however you interpret it, right? For me, it's like it gives me a lot of energy just to keep going and do stuff. But what I notice is I get a lot I'm a lot more lazy and bored easily on hard tasks, like writing, for example. Writing's pretty hard for me right now. Oh, well, to get into it, but once I get into it, I have this weird intense focus uh, on the task. So, aside from that, not too bad. Tomorrow will be my last day for fasting, and then no more. But I wanted to just get right into it. I don't know how long this one is going to be. It might be really short, it might be really long. Um, because I want to piggyback on what we talked about yesterday. And it's the idea that to live is to desire. We talked, just to recap, about how animals in their inherent desire is to inherent purpose in life is to live and is to desire to live, otherwise they die. Same with your heart, your lungs, your eyes, your skin. Their whole purpose, aside from their natural functions, is to live and to keep this organism living. And in a sense, they react to your environment and based on their desire to live, right? It's weird because I just learned about neurons and how they actually they get repurposed if, let's say, one of your senses go out. So if you're blind, the neurons connected to our eyes actually go to different senses over time. But they actually do it when you're doing activities as well. So let's say you're a writer and you're writing. Well, if you're in that activity for extended period of time, the brain will actually recruit different neurons from different parts of the brain to go into the frontal cortex, and they'll actually get bigger too. So, and that's all beyond your control, right? It's all these biological means to survive, to live. It's the neurons and the brain's desire to want to live to keep you alive, right? And we got into why it's a reason to live it because you're not living for others, you're actually living for yourself as well. But I want to go a step further. And I want to say, so we said to live is to desire, right? But I want to go into to live is to desire is to suffer. And the first thing I want to start with is this connection between desire and suffering. And we've been talking about it a little bit lately, right? Is that to desire anything, to want anything, inevitably brings about the possibility of devastation, right? It's that desire balloon we've been talking about. It's the if I want ice cream and I don't get ice cream, then that desire is unfulfilled and I suffer mentally for it. Or my brain suffers mentally for it. Or my reaction pretty much. So it's that Buddhist teaching, right? It's the desire is the source of all suffering. Well, I want to equate it to living as well. So, oh, and kind of what I want on to go. Maybe we can think about it like this way. So I think a lot of people think that to live, the opposite of living is suffering. But I want to think about it a little differently. I want to think about it as to live, the opposite of living is to die. And it seems natural to think about that, but let's think about it with suffering and living. Suffering and living are both activities. Well, not activities, it's you being active within the world. Whereas death is a immediate stillness of whatever has been living before. And that's a strong contrast as well, because even whenever you suffer, you are living within that world. Let me explain it like this. So we were talking about how your heart and your lungs were are desiring to live. They pump themselves. The heart pumps itself. The lungs breathe themselves, aside from when you consciously do it. And whenever, as we talked about before, whenever you or some person tries to kill themselves, the heart and lungs react. It's their desire not to die. They want to live, right? Well, we can think about it like in the sense that since their desire it's since they're desiring to live, to uh, since the heart and lungs are desiring to live, and that is threatened, we can and see that they're suffering as well, and see that the heart beating faster, the lungs breathing harder is the natural reaction to that threat of death, threat of their desire to live. And with that threat to the desire comes that potential for devastation. So it's almost like the heart and lungs are kind of, like I said, reacting to that world and reacting to oh, the suffering that is brought upon is might be brought upon it. That might not be the best explanation I've done, but that's kind of where I'm at. And that since if we are to believe that to live is to desire, or more specifically, to live is to have the desire to live, and we are to incorporate within all these animals, these organic beings, then there are in their inherent desire to live brings about the possibility for devastation. And that possibility for devastation is suffering, right? If we get devastated, then we suffer. You can see this a little bit in fasting as well, right? I we're the desire for our stomach to fulfill its purpose of digesting food, and thus its purpose to keep this organism alive and to live. In fasting, we're our self-awareness and our self is depriving our stomach from that desire. So in a sense, our stomach is suffering because its desire isn't being fulfilled. It goes into panic mode, right? It tells its nervous system, hey, look, like we're not getting food. give this body more energy so it can go out in the wilderness. I'm talking our ancestors, right? Hunter-gatherers. Tell how the body or give the body more energy to go out and do this, or we're gonna die, right? And since that desire isn't being fulfilled, myself, forcing my body to, oh, not fulfill its desire to live, to go against its purpose, my stomach's suffering. It's really weird to think about because it's like you're anamorphizing and your organs, but it's things that these organs and these parts of your body are things you don't have control over. You have control of what you put into your mouth, but do you have control over the digestive process? Do you have control over the way in which your stomach digests digests the foods and then puts it through the filters of the pancreas, the kidney, and the liver? No, it's working beyond your control. And once we start thinking of the body and everything around us as being its own autonomous individuals that have their own purpose, and that purpose is to live, it's interesting to kind of connect that to, I want to say consciousness, but I think how we use the word consciousness as is more of self-awareness, right? But I want to think about it as more levels. That self-conscious has certain levels to it. Right now, we'd be the highest form of consciousness, right? We have all the biological, all desires, the different selves, but we have the ability to be self-aware of ourselves. And that gives us a great advantage, and I would argue a higher consciousness. That's what you see in the frontal cortex, is that in humans, we have the most neurons in the frontal cortex compared to any other animals. We might not have the most neurons, but we have the most neurons in our frontal cortex, which produces that self-awareness and consciousness. Well, if the frontal cortex produces this consciousness and self-awareness, then wouldn't animals have it as well? Not the self-awareness, but the ability towards it, maybe at a lower level of consciousness. And thinking of it in the terms as we were talking about, is these animals all desire to live, right? And actually suffer. And we know that animals feel pain. There's been studies on it and showing that animals do feel pain. So, oh, it doesn't. It's not a stretch of the imagination to think that we have a higher consciousness than animals do. Now I'm going to take it even further and say that at even the smallest organisms or smallest units of life also have a sort of consciousness, but on the smaller end. A good example is neurons, right? So neurons, beyond our conscious control, interact with each other beyond our control, like I was talking about. They have a sort of agency, or they are able to interact with each other and say, oh, look, this person's blind, or this organism can't see. I don't want to stop working. I don't want to be inactive. Let me go somewhere else to oh, be of use. So they go into taste, they go into hearing, they go into touch, right? They have that agency to fulfill its purpose to live, because as if they would stay just in the eyesight, they'd lose activity, and it would go back to what I was talking about, that death is the opposite of living. And death is that stillness, it's the inactivity. So neurons would be inactive within the purpose of trying to uh, work in the eyes as well. Instead, they have a sort of agency to say, not to say, but to instinctually be like, hey, I got to go somewhere else to work or I will, quote unquote, die. So that's what they do. And it's the same with the frontal cortex with whenever you're in immense concentration. It's the brain and you unconscious, the brain beyond your control saying, and the neurons within saying, oh crap, hey, look, uh, he's trying to concentrate on something. And let's reorganize into our frontal cortex to help him with that. Of course, you got to break through the wall all to get into that concentration, right? It's not immediate because your neurons are always trying to understand what's going on. If you're not in a certain state for long enough, they're not going to be able to be repurposed quick enough to do anything. But once you get into, let's say, writing, once you break through the wall and start getting to the state of flow, that's when our neurons are like, oh, hey, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I got you. I got you. I got you. And they start going to the frontal cortex, expand and learn more. Of course, they go back whenever you're not doing it. And that's the beauty of the brain, right? Is it's not just a brain. It's the neurons within and working within and having this agency and having this consciousness, this smaller consciousness that they're working with. So it's interesting to see the different levels of consciousness. And to wrap it all up, I just think, Hank, that going back to our quote, to live is to desire, to live is to live is to desire, to live is to suffer. I just think that there is more of a connection, and emotional, maybe not emotional is the right word, but deeper level of consciousness and interconnectivity and yeah, consciousness between multiple aspects of life that we don't necessarily recognize yet. Of course, because a lot of our science isn't the tools we have for science aren't necessarily developed as to test these skills, or not skills, but uh, these theories. Not to say they won't ever, because that's what science is the uh, uncertainty of our abilities to test the universe. But right now, uh, with our current understanding, I don't think the mainstream population would agree with my assessment of consciousness being almost at every level of being. And we can go into being and stuff like that, but I think that's good enough for tonight. It's not going to be one I am going to post in a vlog edit video or edit, because this one is more of me thinking through my ideas and thinking through how I think of my own ideas. And I'm appreciative for you guys listening and for the camera to be able to see me and all my weird jumbled ideas and trying to bumble my way through them and bumble my way through life. So, yeah, I'm thankful and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.